Okay, Ty, we're gonna move into the wide receiver crew. We got a few groups here, some pretty stellar players. We're gonna start off right at the top. We are gonna go Devontae Adams of the Packers, Julio, and then we're gonna talk about Nuke Hopkins, the newly minted wide receiver one in Arizona. So hit me with what you got on those three.
Yeah, so I got Devontae Adams as my redraft. I have Julio as my fade, unfortunately, and Nuke Hopkins as my dynasty guy. I have all of these guys as top 6 wide receivers in redraft, though. And then I think there's a big separation here with Julio when it comes to dynasty.
Mhm.
So do you have Julio as your fade?
I do not. I do not.
Nice. I was hoping you wouldn't. So how do you, yeah, just lay them out for me then. How do you have them?
Yeah, I got Adams as the fade. I've got Julio as the redraft, and I've got Nuke as the dynasty. I think the dynasty choice in this one was probably the easiest one with Nuke being attached to Kyler, being attached to Cliff, being all world. I think Nuke was the easy choice as the dynasty guy. Julio for redraft for me is just because we talked a little bit previously about all the targets that are available, and use those how you will. But I think Julio's volume is secure at like 150 to 180 targets potentially. And we know he's going to give you those 1,400 yards. So I think he's got easily top 3 in his probable outcome for me. Devontae Adams for me was the fade because I like Julio more for redraft this year. And I had to have Nuke as the dynasty pick. So Adams was the fade for me just because of the future. I think he could have a good year in 2020. We talked on a previous episode. In fact, I think he was the namesake of that episode, that Devontae Adams is going to be a target funnel in Green Bay. And obviously with them bringing in no wide receivers in the draft, that's going to hold true. Devin Funchess does not scare me. But I think for the future, if Jordan Love is his quarterback, I don't think that's nearly as good for him as Aaron Rodgers, who kind of zones in on his guy that he likes, and Devontae Adams is that. So I think there's going to be some change coming for Devontae Adams. I also think the drafting of AJ Dillon kind of tells me that they might LaFleur and company might lean a little bit more run heavy going forward, because he kind of looks like he's trying to build Titans north or wherever Green Bay is. So I think that's a little bit sketchy for Devontae Adams long term. And like I said, in the short term, I like Julio's 2020 better than Devontae Adams, who I still really like for 2020. So it's going to be an interesting group to see shake out. Where you got him at?
Yeah, I got Devontae Adams redraft, Julio as my fade, Nuke as my dynasty play. I
Right.
think it's
Yeah.
an interesting argument because Devontae Adams, like they're all top 6 for me in redraft. I think it's safety versus ceiling. Like Devontae Adams and Julio are giving you a lot of safety, respectively. I mean that. Like I think Devontae Adams is my wide receiver 3 and my wide receiver 4 in dynasty. I think he's very safe. I've kind of waxed and waned on him, but actually the irony is the more that they've shown that they want to run the ball, the more I've really pushed Devontae Adams back up because they just have nobody else to go to, in my opinion. I'm not on the whole Jay Sternberger. I might take
No.
I might take Robert Tonyan over him if I had to in like a FFPC best ball as my 4th tight end. But I think Devontae Adams, like him and Aaron Rodgers, that connection is real, and I think Devontae Adams is kind of a special talent when it comes to putting up pretty much 20 points per game in fantasy. And there's not a lot of guys who do that. Whereas Julio Jones, we know we're not getting that spike touchdown season.
Yeah.
We know we have to rely heavily on super volume, and he can facilitate that. But I think Devontae Adams just does it a little easier. I don't know. I think that's a really good debate, is
For sure.
Devontae Adams against Julio in redraft. But I think Nuke Hopkins is the unquestioned guy who can have that ceiling. I think him having that wide receiver 1 overall season is in the range of outcomes, where I'm not sure if it even is for Devontae Adams or Julio. I think it is for Devontae Adams, actually. And maybe that's why I slightly have Devontae over Julio. But all 3 of those guys are pretty close, except for Julio is somebody I'm fading in dynasty leagues, I think, just a bit. But I think everybody is, so that's a slippery slope in itself. But when it comes to startup drafts, I think Julio Jones is somebody who I'd have, a good 5, maybe not top 10 even for
sure.
wide receivers, and Nuke Hopkins and Devontae Adams are those guys. What do you think of this next group? Because this next group I have are players who I'm a lot higher on in Dynasty, I would say, than I am in redraft, maybe. But there are also a lot of slot wide receivers who are a little bit safer. So I have DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, and Juju Smith-Schuster. How do you have those guys?
This one was really hard, man. This, much like one of those running back, well, I can't remember which one it was, but earlier, one of the running back ones was really, really hard because we liked all 3 players. This is just it. Like, I think DJ Moore is going to be awesome in that Matt Rule offense, and Cooper Kupp. I love Cooper Kupp, and Juju's so young and he's just shown so much after the catch and just great talent. This was a hard one. So I had to go DJ Moore for Dynasty. The attachment to that big, long contract for Matt Rule. I think Teddy Bridgewater plays well into his skill set as kind of a lower ADOT after the catch player. So DJ Moore was the dynasty choice. And then Cooper Kupp was the redraft choice. A little piece of that was because Cooper Kupp is a little bit older. He's probably, I think he's going to be 27 by the time this season's over. So I went Cooper Kupp for redraft because I think he's going to. Yeah, and I think he's going to have an explosion this year. I think he's used so heavily in the red zone, and Jared Goff just loves him so much as that safety blanket. I think Cooper Kupp's going to have a massive 2020, and so that's why I went him for redraft and DJ Moore for dynasty. Juju as the fade just feels wrong to say, right? Juju, like he's not even going to be 23 by the time the season starts, I think, or maybe just 23. Like I said, he's shown out after the catch. You've laid out in previous pods just how good Juju is after the catch, and honestly, I can say it's not you being a Steelers homer. It's just because Juju is that fantastic. But the reason I had to fade him is just because I think there's going to be some quarterback uncertainty in Pittsburgh. His contract, I mean, there's rumors that he could be elsewhere at the end of the season, which would be pretty wild. But yeah, it's just a little bit of uncertainty for Juju's future. But if I knew where Juju is going to be for the next couple of years, I think Juju would probably be the dynasty choice for me. Where do you have these guys sitting? Because I think it's all really close. I think they all have like amazing potential.
Yeah, I have it the same as you. I'll put it this way. I have DJ Moore as somebody I have a lot more conviction in, maybe both formats. Like I put Cooper Kupp as my redraft and DJ Moore as my dynasty. I did that so I could, take DJ Moore as my dynasty wide receiver because I have him as a top 7 wide receiver. I have him as my wide receiver 7 in dynasty. And I don't have Cooper Kupp or Juju Smith-Schuster as a wide receiver 1 in dynasty. I have them outside the top 12. Cooper Kupp, the yards after the catch is undeniable. He leads the NFL in wide receiver yards after the catch per reception over the last 2 years. And, I think he's attached to that offense, and he's just a freakish combination of a guy who has spectacular chemistry and rapport with this quarterback, and in a very good system that is schemed up and kind of tailored to his to what he does well. And I just think the touchdown upside is hard to come by for wide receivers these days, and Cooper Kupp is definitely on a different stratosphere than DJ Moore in that aspect. So I think there's 2 ways that DJ Moore and Cooper Kupp both separate from Juju Smith-Schuster. So I don't think it's incorrect to have Juju as a fade. And yeah, I've made a huge issue about Juju Smith-Schuster and his yards after the catch. But I've also, throughout this offseason kind of done some research, or at least I've read a lot of other people's research where there's kind of a threshold. If you're getting more than 40% of your yards after if you're getting more than 40% of your receiving yards after the catch, it's kind of a separation between wide receiver 1s and 2s. You just don't see the Julio Joneses, the Devontae, the Nuke Hopkins. These guys who are super studs, they don't put up very many yards after the catch because they're seeing their targets down the field, and they're seeing they're seeing high leverage volume. So I just think Juju Smith-Schuster is somebody that I think is going to be a very safe play, no matter who the quarterback is, whether it's Ben Roethlisberger, who also is underrated, just like Jared Goff, when it comes to how much he relies on his offense and yards after the catch from his wide receivers. But I think all these guys have really good floors built into them. And you mentioned it, they're all in this group because they excel after the catch. DJ Moore kind of has that ground floor effect when it comes to what we can expect going forward in Carolina with Joe Brady, with Matt Rule. We really want to be attached to that team. And then Cooper Kupp, as long as, it is his contract year. So as long as he is back with Jared Goff, and, he can be another guy that we're making fun of how much they have tied up in these, 3 or 4 guys while they're still paying Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley. So I think Cooper Kupp is the guy that people don't want to love, but we should. I know there's a lot of reasons. He didn't have a lot of fanfare coming out of college. He's slow. He's all these things, but he still is one of the guys that we're going to project to score the most touchdowns in 2020. And he's got one of the best rapports and sees red zone work, and he's been top 10 in red zone volume since coming into the league. So I think DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, they just separate in different ways. I think DJ Moore might be the best wide receiver after the catch in the next 5 years going forward. And Juju Smith-Schuster might be the second best, but it's still second best behind DJ Moore.
Yeah, I think that was well put, dude. You mind if I fly into this next crew?
Yeah, I love this next one.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation. Odell Beckham, Amari Cooper, and Mike Evans. all guys who were kind of upper tier guys. They probably moved into the maybe the third tier of wide receivers now. But I think I'm really curious to see where you have these guys, Ty. So why don't you fire away?
Okay, so I have Odell Beckham, Amari Cooper. I didn't write it down here actually. So let's go Amari Cooper for redraft. Let's go Odell Beckham for dynasty, and Mike Evans will be my fade, which I kind of feel bad about because for dynasty, I still really like Mike Evans. I think I'm a little bit higher than consensus on all three of these guys for dynasty. I have actually I'll just ask you. So I gave my answers there. Odell's my dynasty, Amari Cooper's my redraft, Mike Evans is my fade. Do you have all these guys as wide receiver ones in redraft and dynasty?
I do not. Okay, so I'm going to lay it out for you here. So in Dynasty, I have Odell at 10. I have Amari at 12, and I have Mike Evans at 15. And then for redraft, I have, as we go down the list here, I have Amari at 12, Evans at 13. And where the hell's Odell? Odell.
Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him on the list here, but he'd probably be right in that 12-13 range. Sorry, I don't know why he's not on my rankings list here. That's odd. But yeah, so as far as the selections, sorry, I've got Odell as my dynasty guy, Amari Cooper as my redraft guy, and Mike Evans as the fade. So to start with Mike Evans, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I really like Mike Evans. I don't necessarily think the fade is deserved, but I think the other two offer a more versatile skill set and a more versatile projected usage in an offense. So I think Mike Evans, I worry a little bit about the Brady acquisition for Mike Evans, because I think Brady's going to try and get the ball out quick, and that plays into Chris Godwin, maybe the tight ends, and potentially the running backs, and not as much to Mike Evans. So that's kind of why I have Evans as the fade. Cooper's the redraft one because it's just wheels up for that Dallas offense. And I think with that contract they just signed him to, and then drafting CeeDee Lamb, they're going to want to get the most they can out of Amari Cooper before they try and cut bait on that contract with CeeDee coming up behind him. And then Odell's the dynasty one because he's just an all-world talent. I think he is going to continue to solidify himself as the main target in Cleveland. And I think another year can kind of show that. And I think we might be able to see some of that peak Odell that we saw in his early career as a Giant.
Yeah, so I have it as Odell Dynasty, Amari redraft, Mike Evans fade. Mike Evans being the fade, I just want to say I have all these guys as top 14 wide receivers in all formats. So I'm pretty high on all these guys. Odell, I think, is the one that I think separates a little bit from the other two. I think Odell has a little more safety, and if he does develop that chemistry and they, don't have a horrible catch rate, all that stuff, if some of the stuff returns that we saw in blue for Odell Beckham in Cleveland, he can separate by having that weekly floor built in, and he can also have that explosion, being a top 5 wide receiver. Amari Cooper and Mike Evans, I think, have been a very similar light. They're guys who are going to win you some weeks, and they're going to fucking kill you some weeks. They're going to give you like literally 5 points or less 20% of the time, which really sucks. But you got to think of how people can finish as top 12 wide receivers while screwing people 20% of the time. And that's because 80% of the time they're giving you those big blow up weeks. And I think Amari Cooper and Mike Evans will both continue to do that for years to come. And I think I just have a lot more faith in Amari Cooper's offense, how it's going to operate. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going to happen in the long term in Tampa Bay, but I know that in Dallas, I have a lot of faith in Dak Prescott signing a long-term deal. I have a lot of faith in Kellen Moore staying in Dallas, and I think him and Mike McCarthy, man, I'm telling you, the new analytical Mike McCarthy, they're going to make some magic together. Yeah. And I think you look 2 years down the road, who knows what happens with Mike Gallup. I imagine Gallup ends up walking in free agency because of what happens with contracts, and maybe Dallas has some money issues at that point because of the Dak Prescott deal. So I think Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb could be the long-term options in that powerhouse pass-heavy offense in Dallas. And then these are all guys I think that should you be drafting them as your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 on a dynasty team, I don't think you're going to regret it, as long as you can build in some safety when it comes to Amari Cooper and Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think Odell's probably the only one who I'd be comfortable with as the wide receiver one on a dynasty roster. So that's definitely interesting. And I'm just checking it out right now, but I think there might be an out in that Amari Cooper contract. So it'll be interesting to see whether they essentially select Michael Gallup over Amari Cooper. Depending on what Gallup's asking price is, I could potentially see them taking the out on Amari. Sorry, I'm just
I
loading
think
up
that
that.
deal's going to look spectacular in 2 years.
Yeah, it definitely could, but I
They
think
usually do. Like those
yeah.
wide receiver deals usually look a lot better. Like when other people are making 23 or 24, I think it's going to look pretty good.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, he's going to be making 22 mil the next couple years, and in
And think of all the
2022,
names that are coming up
for
there.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And in 2022, the dead cap's only 6 million, so there is a bit of an out on that. But it'll be interesting to see what the production is with them having like the best trio of wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, and we know Allen Robinson and Amari Cooper are still babies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sneaky young guys.
So speaking of sneaky young and some
Oh, I don't
babies,
like
let's
this
go.
one.
Yeah, I love it. So let's
I
go
do.
DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, and AJ Brown.
I like it, but I don't like it. Like I don't want
I
to have
didn't
to
even write it
choose.
down because I didn't decide,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, looking at
Me
it.
neither. All I put in my notes is this one's nasty. Just because I think at various points we have all expressed love for all three of these guys, DK, Terry Mack, and AJ Brown. Okay, so let me just sit here. I don't have it written down here. Let me think.
Well, I'll lay it out here. I
Okay,
have
yeah,
all
fly
these
in.
guys. These guys are all top 16 wide receivers in my dynasty ranks, just for
Nice.
context. So that's
I
I'm pretty high
like
on all
it.
these guys. DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, AJ Brown, I think are all super stud talents. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I think it's tricky. I have them all top 24. So I have DK a little bit farther back, and I might need to adjust that a little bit. I have Terry McLaurin
Yeah,
at
if
20.
anyone has any of those guys outside their top 24 in dynasty, yeah,
Yeah,
you might
yeah.
be
So
drafting too many Todd Gurley's and stuff.
been guilty of
You know
that
what I mean though?
before, right?
That's I just like to like relate it, that's why I'm always skipping that kind of that running back dead zone is because the DK Metcalfs, the Terry McLaurins, the AJ
Yeah.
Browns, I want a few of these guys.
Yeah, once you get into that fourth round is when you can start hammering these guys, I think. But yeah, I mean, DK, the only reason is just the overall target volume that I think he sees. I think he might be the lower target piece alongside Tyler Lockett, who might get the higher targets, but it's really hard to say. Like Russell Wilson's going to be super efficient regardless. So I think DK probably is one of those spiked weak guys. I think Terry McLaurin and AJ Brown can be those more consistent guys. For me, I'm going to go, okay, let me go Terry McLaurin for Dynasty, AJ Brown for redraft, and unfortunately, I'm going to fade DK just on what I said there about the potential volume that I'm not quite sure on. Terry McLaurin is going to be the dynasty play because I think he's just a very versatile asset, and he showed really well on shitty quarterback play last year. So if they can get even like 10 to 15% better quarterback play, I think Terry McLaurin has a wicked ceiling, and he's going to be a solid upper echelon wide receiver too for dynasty teams. AJ Brown's the redraft choice for me just because I think this passing offense is going to be centered around him like it was in the last half of last year. So AJ Brown's the redraft choice for me because I like his outlook with Tannehill this year. But I mean, I don't think we're going to say that we're 100% banking on Tannehill to have the numbers he did at the end of last year. So that's why AJ Brown wasn't the dynasty choice for me, is because I could see a world where Tannehill implodes and they're looking for another quarterback as well. So where do you have these three young studs at, these stallions galloping?
So I'm just thinking about, I guess I'll go AJ Brown dynasty. I'll go Terry McLaurin as my fade, and I'll go DK Metcalf in redraft. So basically, I'm
Nice.
doing that because I have AJ Brown the highest of these three in dynasty. But like I said, they are all within 5 spots of each other in my dynasty rankings when it comes to the wide receiver position. And then for redraft, I just happen to have Terry McLaurin a little bit lower than these guys. All of them are top 22 wide receivers in redraft for me. DK Metcalf, what can I say? I think the guy is with, maybe the best deep ball passer in the NFL in the last half decade, a guy with a huge touchdown rate that repeats every year. I just love Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf. I love that connection. I think it's going to be solid for years to come. I think him and Tyler Lockett are massive values in both redraft and dynasty. And I just want to be in on that efficiency in Seattle. I think DK Metcalf's a guy who none of these guys have to be our wide receiver one, but they're going to give us a lot of wide receiver 1 weeks. I think that's my whole point. None of these guys are going to break 125 targets in 2020, but I think all of them have that potential to be top 12 wide receivers in 2020. Terry McLaurin, I love for a million reasons. I mean, I've mentioned so many times that him and Dwayne Haskins have like this supernatural connection. I don't like Dwayne Haskins. I don't think he's a very good quarterback. I don't like the fact that he doesn't take big risks, you know what I mean? And he doesn't have a lot of the things that I want him to have, like that we're looking for. So it's very possible he gets replaced and he has a much better quarterback operating with Terry McLaurin. But I also think that if Dwayne Haskins is still there, we've seen what him and Terry McLaurin can do, and we've seen how strong that connection is. We go back to like even 2017 at the college ranks, and they had the number one passer rating delivered to one another in 2017, ahead of like Baker Mayfield and CeeDee Lamb and people like that. So it's just crazy what they've done. And I think Terry McLaurin continues to be undervalued. I think if anybody was to hit 120 targets, it will be him or it will be AJ Brown. Yeah. I think AJ Brown, the argument I have for him is that he is super talented. He was my number one wide receiver coming out in that draft class, and we pushed him down our boards irresponsibly. So don't want to make that mistake again. I think the big question is the volume with AJ Brown. It is that offense, and I totally agree. But if Derrick Henry was to leave at the end of the season, and it's anybody's ball game, because that's my big problem with the offense in Tennessee is that the play volume is slow. They're going to run the ball 450 times in that offense, and AJ Brown is going to suffer because of that. But I would also argue that what we saw with Corey Davis when what's his name came in and replaced LaFleur there, Mike Vrabel, ended up heaping. So Corey Davis as a rookie had about 19% market share or something. He ended up going up to 25% market share in 2018, erroneously. It was a debacle, obviously. But for Mike Vrabel to show that kind of confidence and make Corey Davis such a predominant wide receiver 1 for his team, I think is a precursor to what we should see with A.J. Brown, who obviously impressed immensely. If it wasn't for this one thing, like AJ Brown just dominated after the catch. Him and Deebo Samuel had historic yards after the catch per reception numbers last year. What the difference was is AJ Brown did all this on the outside. So I think there'll be a lot more attention paid to AJ Brown from defenses. There might be a lot more racket coverage and things like that. So I think we do need to see some better separation from A.J. Brown on a consistent basis. And I know we don't care a lot about separation with certain wide receivers, but I think when we see the yards after the catch totals we saw from A.J. Brown, we know he plays outside. I think we do need to see that separation from him.
Yeah, I definitely like that.
Are you satisfied on that group, Trav?
I am satisfied on that group. I think I want all three guys, like you said. I want pieces of them in my dynasty teams, and it was a really tough choice between those three. So that's why I didn't write it down, because I didn't want to put the words on paper.
So staying with separation, not a lot of people are seeing separation between some of these wide receivers and some of them I just mentioned. So that's why I did this one next. So we have Calvin Ridley, Courtland Sutton, and Devontae Parker. I have Calvin Ridley as my dynasty. I have Courtland Sutton as my dynasty, Calvin Ridley as my redraft, and Devontae Parker as my easy fade in this group.
Right. I like that. That's a tricky one. I'm gonna go Calvin Ridley dynasty. I think that's tricky. Devontae Parker is kind of enticing for redraft, to be completely honest with you, but I think I'm going to stick with Courtland Sutton. There was a little bit of connection with Drew Lock at the end of last year. I do like Devontae Parker, but P. Willie coming back, we talked a little bit about that and how he is a big threat to Devontae Parker's volume. Like, Devontae Parker is not going to see 128 targets in 2020 like he did last year. So I think Devontae Parker is the fade for me, but I'm going to flip-flop the other two. And I'm going to put Calvin Ridley as the dynasty guy and Courtland Sutton as the redraft guy. I've liked Calvin Ridley quite a bit, and I think he is in line for more volume. He has shown efficiency in the red zone, and I think he can get it done this year. I know we kind of say that every year for Calvin Ridley, and the poor bastard's only in his third season, but I think he can definitely put it together. And Courtland Sutton, I like for dynasty as well, but I think we're going to see a little bit of a change as far as target distribution coming in 2021. The reason I am not putting Parker above Courtland Sutton for this season is because the abbreviated offseason that we're seeing, and I think it's going to be harder for players like Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler to come in and command some of those targets. So I think Cortland Sutton's volume is pretty safe for 2020, but 2021 is where my worry comes in a little bit. So that's why I'm going to have him as the redraft choice.
Well put. Yep. I think Cortland Sutton's by far the most talented out of these three. I don't even think that's very close. I think Calvin Ridley can flash that talent, give you those big weeks. And I think Calvin Ridley has that upside where if he can come with that floor, we hope he can. If he can, he's a lock wide receiver too, in my opinion. And I think in Dynasty, I have a huge separation. Like I really like Calvin Ridley, really like Cortland Sutton, both top 20 wide receivers. Devontae Parker is just somebody I'm totally fading.
Yeah, I'm fully with you on that one. That's interesting that you say that, Ty, because there's a series that I plan on doing for the YouTube channel, and I'm going to talk about players who surged in the back half of the season last year, and Devontae Parker is going to be the first installment. So that's one that I'm going to dig into a little bit more. We have talked a little bit about it in past episodes, but I'm going to dive into his tale of two seasons a little bit there. So definitely an interesting group, and I'm with you on that. The Devontae Parker, there is a gap between him and those other two pretty big time.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be lost. Like Devontae Parker was so impressive. I mean, he's ripping up guys like Stephon Gilmore. He's ripping up some amazing elite cornerbacks in one-on-one coverage, like in shadow coverage last year to finish the season too. It was incredible. But yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick was a YOLO quarterback, and that team had zero running game. Like I've never seen such a black hole in the running game from what we saw in Miami last year.
For sure. And they brought in two really capable backs. Jordan Howard and Matt Breida can be great on the ground. And I think Matt Breida can be great through the air as well. So I'm interested to see the usage now that they, they have some usable bodies there instead of just a bunch of pylons. All right, dude. I think that wraps up our Dino redraft and fade. How's that for you?
You don't want to do the rookies? Just rapid fire here. CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs.
Fire away. Yeah. Okay. CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. Dynasty, it's going to be CeeDee Lamb. Redraft is going to be Henry Ruggs because the wide receiver core in Oakland really needs somebody to command that. And I think of any of the rookies, I think he's got a pretty clear path. And then Jerry Jeudy has to be the fade for me. I like Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty, similarly to what I said against Cortland Sutton's future. I think Jerry Jeudy is going to be the beneficiary of that, but I just couldn't put him over CeeDee Lamb being attached to that Dallas offense, and ideally Dak for the next 3 to 5 seasons. So CD is the dynasty play for me. Where do you got those guys?
So I put CeeDee Lamb as my dynasty, Jerry Jeudy as my redraft, Henry Ruggs as my fade. I think Henry Ruggs is a guy who, if they replace Derek Carr, he'll just shoot up my rankings next year. CeeDee Lamb, I just think, he's such an amazing talent. All these guys are, wide receiver 38 or worse in redraft for me. All of them are wide receiver 25 or better 27 or better. Actually, I keep moving Henry Ruggs down for some reason, but these guys all have a big ceiling. I think Jerry Judy's the one with the floor, and CeeDee Lamb is the guy who I think could have both.
Nice.
Do you want to do tight ends or do you want to save them?
Why don't we save them? We'll get into some tight ends a little bit later. We're getting near the 2-hour mark here, so maybe we'll just tie this one in a bow and we'll do some tight ends on a later date.
Sounds good.
All righty. Yeah, Ty, really quick before we start the ride out here, I just want to talk a little bit about what the team has going on. So obviously earlier I mentioned the TNFF network, our YouTube channel. We are super stoked about that. I just mentioned a little bit of a series that I'm going to be doing on there. We hope to bring, not only just the roundtable discussion, but Ty and I like to think that we're pretty informational on our podcast and that we give you lots of ammo to put in your tool belt. And I think that's kind of one thing that we want to bring to the YouTube space is we want to bring some really, not necessarily long videos, maybe some shorties, but stuff that's going to be really hard hitting information and stuff that you can soak in and take with you as you move into drafts and trades and all sorts of fantasy roster management. So super stoked on the YouTube channel. We got articles coming on the site. Shout out to OG Article Joe for doing all of our editing. He's doing a stellar job keeping all the articles organized and keeping us posted on what's ready to go and whatnot. So we really appreciate that. And of course, the team, we've got 4 podcasts in the True North Fantasy Football Podcast Network. Obviously, there is Ty and my podcast, the True North Fantasy Pod. We got Jim and Connor on the Gold Jacket Pod. We've got Josh Smoky Hell Nelson on the Smoke Show Pod. And then the newest members of the True North team, Julian and Aaron at the Point After Twitter. So you can follow them at the point after FF. Really stoked to have those guys on board. Loving the team, loving the direction that True North is going right now. So I just wanted to take some time to mention all of that. Of course, another guy that I didn't mention there was good old Big Willie Style. He's doing a lot of really good stuff in the community with charity leagues and all sorts of stuff. So definitely feel free to hit the site and check out the team, get familiar, get following everybody. Really stoked about where we're going as a group, as a collective. We're kind of all on the same page and it feels great.
Yeah, pumped to be in the same Scott Fishbowl division as Julian.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. You got Polly
And
Pocket, eh?
And Josh Ermsmeyer, one of my all-time heroes when it comes to the industry.
That is killer. I've got Rock'em Sock'em, and the main highlight in that one for me was Evan Silva, but I know that it is a very stellar group. So if any of those Rock'em Sock'ems are listening, that was not a slight to you by any means. It's just Evan Silva was the name that jumped off the page for me because it's pretty exciting to be able to draft and play with him. Hopefully he doesn't smash me.
Yeah, if anybody was offended by me only mentioning Hermsmeyer, work harder.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, be better.
Don't be so easily offended because Hermsmeyer's the king.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be fun too. I think Silva is drafting one spot ahead of me as well, so it will be interesting to see where he goes in the draft. And we're super excited about the Scott Fish Bowl. Shout out to Scott Fish for putting that on, and all the work that he puts in, and everybody who's putting in a bunch of work and giving their time for a great cause. So yeah,
I want to mention that again too. Like I love the person that Scott Fish is. I think it's just so commendable. And I'll say it again that, it's one thing to make it in this industry and in a lot of ways that people do. It's another thing to make it with just pure good messages, with non-agenda driven, well-intentioned, actions. I just think what he's done is so, it's so hard to accomplish. And I just think he set such a good example for how to carry yourself in this industry.
Mm-hmm. And in life probably too, right? He's just you can tell from like the first piece of a message that you see from him or whatever, a post that he puts out, that he is just a good human being. And so I think we could all take some of those values back and try to be better ourselves. But very, very well said, Ty. We're super excited for this Fish Bowl. I think as of this recording, we're about 8 days out from drafting. So it's prep time. I got a couple of mocks on the go. I got my Avi and my banner coming soon. Crunching some of the numbers, soaking up all the spreadsheets I see on Twitter and stuff. We appreciate all the people who are putting that stuff out, because that stuff's a lot of work and it's really cool for us to dig through. So yeah, so that's kind of what's going on for True North right now. As always, you can see both mine and Ty's handles right there and right there. Okay, yeah. Ty is at TNFF Tyrell and I am at TSEAL14. So yeah, really appreciate all of our listeners. Couldn't be here without you. We really love you. TrueNorthFFB.com is the site to find all of our work, and True North FFB is the Twitter handle. So Ty, you got any final parting shots here?
No, yeah, check out the rankings.
Yeah, definitely check out the rankings popping up on the site very shortly. We got Canada Day on Wednesday, July 1st. So, all of our people down in the States or anywhere outside of Canada, just have a drink for us on Wednesday, because it's Canada Day. It's going to be fun. All right, Ty, if you're good, I'm good. All right, peace.